Sup YouTube? My name is Matt. I go by Bean. I'm an artist from Indiana. I do lots of different stuff: drawing, painting, sculpture, furniture making, 3D modeling. I've done pretty much every different type of art I can think of at some point or another in the last 20 years. I also run a comic book store. That's all the stuff you see behind me. This is my first video in a series of videos that I'm calling the I Do series. And this is my channel called I Do Art Okay. In every video, I'm going to take one or two styles of art and kind of mash them up and do a piece of artwork all the way from concept through completion. And this first piece is called Imagine That. So my first piece is a mix of magical realism and street art, graffiti, different styles of things that would classically be, considered street art. I don't know why I say classically, that it's relatively new. So I start off by drawing a person because I'm a portrait artist, and I feel like that's one of the things that I really love is drawing people. Also, I draw that person in profile. I think it's a little more interesting, but you only have to draw one eye, so you have that. These first two videos, like 45 seconds, were in the wrong orientation, so I just threw in a background behind it. Sorry, it's a little weird. And then next I move on to some butterflies, because I've noticed in a lot of pieces I've seen out on the streets or in some of the research I've done, you see a lot of repeated motifs, and really I just like the idea of repetition in a simple form, but something that's really beautiful, and I have a great idea for these butterflies later. Moving into inking, I use Faber-Castell inking markers, and so I'll just go through and ink all of this, make sure it looks good, get it to kind of somewhere I like, because I'm going to be taking all of this and scanning it into my computer. I really, really prefer working by hand. I could do this all in the computer, but there's something about the tactile sensation of touching a pen to a piece of paper that I just can't replace with a digital art tablet. So once I get this done, I'll take it over to my computer and I'll scan it all in, and then I can start manipulating things in Photoshop, which is my preferred program to be working in. Obligatory B-roll. Look at that paint. That's some mid-range paint right there. And this is my computer, it's a nightmare. I have a larger scanner, so I scan this in two different sections, and then I bring those sections into Photoshop and just kind of play around with those. I'm going to work on isolating out the line work, getting everything to a true black, and you'll see this process as I go through. Isolate each piece, get them all onto separate layers, and then I can really start playing around with stuff and make some effects for these butterflies that I like. You can see here I kind of took the lazy way, since I knew I was going to be working in the computer, and I only drew half of some of these, and that was because I knew I could flip it and get some symmetry, but also I knew I could get multiple poses out of each butterfly. So you see I get a full butterfly and also a half a butterfly just by manipulating those and copy and pasting them over. At this point I realized I've got a lot of extra stuff that got scanned in, and I kind of lazily selected it, so I'm just going through and doing some levels to make everything true black, and then I select that and only get the black out of there. It kind of helps with the quick selection process for me. Now I'm going to start developing a background for the butterflies that I want. I kept thinking of like graffiti butterflies, and in order to start that process, I need a background for them. Just something to fill in the negative spaces for the butterflies. So I found all these brushes on a website called Brush Easy. I find a lot of brushes there. And I start off just by making some big, bold background choices. my entire art process is just try again, fail harder, and eventually you fail upwardly until you come up with something that maybe isn't failing as much and that you're happy with, or at least you're more happy than you are sad you decided to be an artist. And here you see the beginnings of that first phase of, we're going to make some graffiti butterflies, and then I decided I didn't have enough background at all, so even though I was 4 hours into making this background, I was like, better spend another hour or two making even more background stuff. And then finally, we're ready, the world's most overworked background. Um, just the hours of investment into something that you're not even going to really be able to see except chunks of, it just seems like the story of me creating art for my entire life. Here you see I'm just laying in some highlights, and then I'm going to go in, because up until now we're just working in realism, and I want some things that are a little more magical. So I'm going to grab some, what I feel are more magical color choices, but also more kind of street art graffiti color choices in terms of a lot of the colors I've seen from like Mulatto, which is a spray paint company, and Krylon, and your kind of cheaper choices. But I always see these bright, bold, and not always bright, but bold, fascinating colors, and I want to try to emulate some of that here to keep this street art feel going. So one of the big things for me is that doing something that's inspired by graffiti or street art, mural painters, isn't just about color choices. I also wanted to try to mimic one of the many processes I've seen, which is usually it's done with spray paint. So you end up with this, kind of round spray. So I made sure I use these round brushes, and then they do something in the process called cutbacks, which is where you go in with another color and you make those lines sharper. Usually, you would use, whatever your base color was and cut back your highlights, or just a different color, and that's the way you get those sharp lines when using spray paint. So I wanted to make sure I was kind of emulating that, even though I'm painting in Photoshop. I'm trying to make sure I'm doing that street art process, that graffiti process of cutting back each one of my colors here. At this point, I just kind of want to give kind of a note of like, what's my inspiration for this? What's my, process? Why did I make these choices I made? And I've tried on a couple occasions to think about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And the reality is that I'm doing it because it's pretty, and pretty things fucking work better. That's been the vast majority of how and why I do art the way I do it. When asked for a justification, it's because it's beautiful. And I would rather just make beautiful things and not have to have a story or a specific style behind it. I hear that a lot in terms of some of the other creators and artists I've worked with, that you really have to develop your style, and I've never been one for those kinds of thoughts about art, of like develop a style and make sure you're doing something for the right reasons, or what's the story behind it. And a lot of times it's just I'm making something beautiful because before I made it, I think maybe the world was a little less beautiful. And as an artist, if we can add just a tiny bit more to it, then it doesn't have to be profound or immense in its reasoning. It's just, we're here to make something a little bit better. And hopefully in whatever way this does it, it makes something a little bit better. I don't think I'm changing the world here. But I'm making my little corner of it just a little bit prettier. And yeah, there's a part of me that wants to say, butterflies are for this reason, and the old man is, we can see the lines in his face and the world that's passed him by, and to be honest, I don't care. Old men are funner to draw because they have a lot more texture in their face, and butterflies are pretty. And I had this idea that I could do the coloring of the butterfly as this graffiti wall that, because these old graffiti walls have a lot of life to them, and they've been lived in for years, and it's just layers of texture, and I love texture. So I don't have a metaphorical reason for why there are butterflies with an old man and what makes it magical, or why it's magical because it's magical, and it's pretty. And sometimes we don't need more than that. And creating can just be about making something a little bit better for yourself or somebody else. And now finally we've got all the pieces done, including the face, so we're on to composition. And this is always kind of my favorite part, because you're going to try some stuff. Like I said earlier, just try and try again and fail, and you'll see I try compositions for these butterflies and their arrangements so many different ways, and finally I come to something that I'm really happy with, and then I try a bunch more stuff, and I try to include some more graffiti techniques, like the outer. When people are writing, they usually do an outline around the writing, and then they go back and do a second outline that they call the outer. And I try some outers on both the face and the butterflies, and I do some drip effects and some splashes, and really just try to utilize things that I feel that feel to me like street art. here you can see I've changed it up a little bit, and I'll just start playing with scales and change the butterflies until they feel right. Something can be pretty good in terms of a composition, but unless you try it another way, in my mind, like, it doesn't have to be the same in everybody. Sometimes you just nail something. But unless you try it another way, you don't always necessarily know that it is right. So for me, I try and I change and I move and I change more. And like I said, we're here and we're failing upwardly. And then I start thinking about it, and the final thing that I want to see here is to make it more graphic, get some more text in here. So I decide that maybe it might be a little heavy-handed, but maybe it isn't. Let's go in and just throw some text in. Because I'm going to sign it, and that's one of the things that I don't love so much as an artist, is signing a piece of artwork. I think that the text should add something to it. So I decided if I'm going to have my signature, there it is, Bean, I might as well have some other text, which is the title of the piece. Imagine that. So I throw that in there, and then here I'm pretty much done, and I'll be ready to send it off to get some prints and maybe some t-shirts made. So that's the first video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. It'll help out tremendously, and or at least that's what everybody else says. There's going to be a link in the description to my website where I'll have prints of this piece that I made if you want to pick one up. Hit the notification bell if you want to hear about the next things I'm doing. I think the next video I do will be something like custom upholstery, custom furniture, with maybe some Japanese kintsugi mixed in there. It should be fun. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks.